The ventilation systems aboard the Galactic Council station hummed with their usual efficiency, maintaining a comfortable 20 degrees Celsius throughout the diplomatic wing. Commander Vector of the Thermal Guard stood before the assembled officers, his heat-resistant scales gleaming under the sterile lights as he reviewed the mission parameters one final time. "Listen up," he began, his voice carrying the weight of 3 decades of service across hostile environments. "We've got a new recruit arriving today. Human, female. Apparently, she scored top marks in the Academy's cognitive assessments." A ripple of interest moved through the gathered soldiers. Humans were still relatively new to the Galactic Council, having joined only 40 cycles ago. They had proven themselves capable in many fields, yes, but this particular assignment seemed questionable. Lieutenant Crix, a Voltarian whose species thrived in sub-zero temperatures, raised one of his 4 arms. "Sir, with respect, we're heading to Infernus Prime. The surface temperature averages 90 degrees Celsius in the shade. The lava flows reach 400. Humans are known for their fragility in extreme conditions." Vector's expression remained neutral, though privately he shared the same concerns. He had reviewed the newcomer's file thoroughly. Captain Emma Reeves, 28 Earth years old, graduated with honors from the Interstellar Military Academy. Impressive credentials, certainly. But credentials didn't mean much when you were standing on a planet that could literally cook most known species alive. The Council approved her assignment. Vector replied simply, "We follow orders. She arrives in 20 minutes. Make sure the environmental suits are ready." The docking bay announcement chimed precisely on schedule. Vector made his way to the arrival platform, accompanied by his second-in-command, Major Thelra. The Aquarian officer had expressed perhaps the most vocal skepticism about their new team member, which was saying something given that her species originated from an ice moon. The transport vessel hissed as it equalized pressure with the station. The airlock cycled, and the door slid open with a pneumatic wheeze. Captain Emma Reeves stepped through, and Vector's first thought was that she looked even smaller than he'd expected. Humans averaged around 1.7 meters tall, and she fit that description exactly. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her brown eyes scanned the receiving party with an alertness that he appreciated. She wore the standard council uniform, crisp and properly maintained. "Commander Vector," she said, snapping a perfect salute. "Captain Reeves, reporting for duty, sir." "At ease, Captain," Vector responded, returning the salute. "Welcome aboard. I trust your journey was uneventful." "Smooth as silk, sir. Though I've been reviewing the mission briefing, and I have to admit, I'm excited. I've never seen an active volcanic planet before." Excited. The word hung in the air like a badly told joke. Thelra's facial tendrils twitched, a telltale sign of her amusement mixed with disbelief. "Captain," Thelra interjected, her voice cool and measured, "are you aware that Infernus Prime's ambient temperature is roughly equivalent to boiling water on your homeworld?" Emma turned to face the Major, and Vector noticed the slight uptick at the corner of her mouth. A smile? "I'm aware, Major. I've completed the thermal tolerance training. Passed with acceptable marks." "Acceptable marks in a controlled environment," Thelra pressed. "The real thing is considerably different. We'll be spending 6 days planet-side, investigating the smuggling operation at the mining colony. 6 days of relentless heat." "I understand, ma'am." Vector decided to intervene before Thelra's protective instincts kicked into higher gear. "Captain, let me be direct. This assignment is dangerous even for species adapted to high temperatures. Humans have a reputation for determination, But this isn't about willpower. This is about biology. We need to know that you can handle it, because if you can't, you become a liability to the entire team. Emma's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, perhaps. Appreciation for the honest assessment. I understand your concerns, Commander. They're valid. All I ask is that you give me a chance to prove myself. If I start showing signs of heat stress, I'll speak up immediately. It was a reasonable response. Professional. But Vector had seen too many eager recruits overestimate their capabilities. Still, orders were orders. Very well. We depart in 6 hours. Get yourself settled in quarters 12B. Briefing at 1900 hours. Yes, sir. Another crisp salute, and she was gone, her footsteps echoing down the corridor with surprising confidence. Thelra waited until Emma was out of earshot before speaking. She won't last 2 days down there. We should request a replacement. You heard her scores. The Council wouldn't have approved her if they didn't think she could handle it. The Council, Thelra said with barely concealed disdain, sits in climate-controlled offices. They don't understand field conditions. Vector couldn't entirely disagree, but the decision had been made. We'll monitor her closely. At the first sign of serious trouble, we pull her out and continue the mission without her. The briefing that evening went smoothly enough. Emma asked intelligent questions about the mission parameters, the layout of the mining colony, and the suspected smuggling routes. She studied the topographical maps with focused intensity, memorizing escape routes and defensive positions. Whatever else could be said about her, she was clearly a trained professional. It was Lieutenant Crix who brought up the elephant in the room, or rather, the human in the furnace. Captain Reeves, he said, his voice carrying genuine concern rather than judgment. Have you considered the psychological aspects? The heat doesn't just affect you physically. It wears on your mind, makes you irritable, affects your decision-making. Combined with the pressure of proving yourself, it could become overwhelming. Emma met his gaze steadily. I appreciate the concern, Lieutenant, but I didn't come this far to back down from a challenge. Besides, and here that slight smile returned, I grew up in Arizona. I know a thing or two about handling hot weather. The comparison drew polite chuckles from the assembled team, though Vector suspected they were humoring her. Arizona's desert heat, as impressive as it might be by Earth standards, was nothing compared to what awaited them on Infernus Prime. The journey to the planet took 32 hours aboard the military transport Relentless Tide. Vector used the time to review intelligence reports on the smuggling operation. Whoever was running the show had connections, resources, and a complete disregard for Council law. They were moving restricted materials off-world, likely destined for weapons manufacturing in the outer territories. The mining colony provided perfect cover, with thousands of workers and constant shipments of processed ore. He found Emma in the observation deck during the second shift, watching Infernus Prime grow larger in the viewport. The planet lived up to its name, a roiling mass of orange and red, with darker patches marking the cooler, though still searingly hot, highland regions. Quite a view, Vector commented, moving to stand beside her. It's beautiful in a terrifying sort of way, Emma replied without looking away from the planet. All that power, all that energy, makes you feel small. It should. That planet has killed more experienced explorers than I care to count. The heat is only part of it. The toxic gases, the unstable ground, the ash storms that can strip flesh from bone. You're trying to scare me off, Commander. I'm trying to prepare you. There's a difference. Now she did turn to look at him, and Vector was struck by the steadiness in her expression. No bravado, no false confidence, just calm determination. "I know what I signed up for, sir, and I know what people think. That I'm too fragile, too inexperienced, too human. Maybe they're right, but I'm here, and I'm going to do my job. That's all I can promise." It was, Vector reflected, probably the most honest answer she could have given. The descent through Infernus Prime's atmosphere was turbulent, as expected. The transport shuddered and shook, buffeted by thermal updrafts and ash-laden winds. Through the viewport, Vector could see rivers of lava snaking across the landscape, glowing bright orange against the darker rock. The mining colony appeared as a cluster of reinforced structures in a relatively stable basin, surrounded by massive cooling towers that worked overtime to keep the facility at survivable temperatures. So the key transport settled onto the landing pad with a heavy thunk. Vector checked his environmental suit one final time, making sure all seals were secure. Around him, the team did the same. These suits were marvels of technology, capable of maintaining a livable internal temperature even in the most extreme conditions. But they weren't perfect, and they weren't comfortable. He glanced over at Emma, who was methodically checking her own suit with practiced efficiency. The human-sized environmental gear looked bulky on her smaller frame, but she moved in it with reasonable competence. "Helmets on," Vector ordered. "Once we step outside, we're in a hostile environment. Stay alert, stay together, and for the love of the Founders, stay hydrated. The suit's water supply is limited, so don't waste it." The outer airlock opened, and the heat hit them like a physical blow. Even through the suit's insulation and cooling systems, Vector could feel the temperature spike. The external sensors on his helmet display read 87 degrees Celsius, and they were still in the shade of the landing pad's protective overhang. Colony Administrator Rixton met them at the entrance to the main facility. The Sulfurian was perfectly comfortable in this environment, his rocky hide actually thriving in the heat. "Commander Vector, welcome to Infernus Prime. I wish I could say the circumstances were better." "As do I, Administrator. This is my team. We'll need access to your shipping records, personnel files, and security footage for the past 3 months." Of course. Anything to help catch these criminals. Follow me, please. I've prepared a conference room." They moved through the facility's corridors, and Vector kept one eye on his team's vital signs displayed on his helmet's heads-up display. Everyone showed elevated heart rates and slightly increased respiration, normal for the stress of the environment. Except, he blinked, checking the readings again. Emma's vitals were remarkably stable. Not just stable, but almost baseline. Her heart rate was barely elevated, her breathing steady and even. Either her suit's sensors were malfunctioning, or she was handling the heat far better than expected. The conference room was blessedly cooler than the exterior, maintained at a mere 40 degrees Celsius for the benefit of off-world visitors. The team gratefully removed their helmets, and Vector took the opportunity to study Emma directly. She looked completely fine, not sweating, not flushed, not showing any signs of heat stress whatsoever. In fact, she looked more comfortable than Thelra, whose ice-blue skin had taken on a slightly darker shade. "Captain Reeves," Vector said quietly as the administrator began setting up the data terminals. "How are you feeling?" "Good, sir. Ready to get started." "No discomfort? No overheating?" She seemed genuinely puzzled by the question. "No, sir. Should there be?" Before he could respond, Thelra leaned in. "Your suit readouts show normal core temperature. That's impossible for a human in this environment." Emma shrugged, a gesture that seemed almost comically casual given the situation. "I don't know what to tell you, Major. I feel fine. Actually, I feel pretty comfortable." Comfortable. There was that word again. Vector filed away his confusion for later analysis. They had work to do. The briefing took 3 hours, and by the end of it, the scope of the smuggling operation became clear. Whoever was behind this had infiltrated multiple levels of the colony's administration. The missing materials included rare isotopes used in plasma weapons, restricted nanomaterials, and worst of all, samples of the extremophile bacteria native to Infernus Prime. Those bacteria could theoretically be weaponized, used to contaminate water supplies or agricultural systems on dozens of worlds. "We'll need to inspect the mining operations directly," Vector decided. "That means suiting up and heading into the deep tunnels. Administrator, I'll need a guide who knows the layout." "I can assign someone," Rixton replied, but he looked uncomfortable. "However, I should warn you, the deep tunnels reach temperatures of 120 degrees Celsius. Even with environmental suits, exposure time is limited to 4 hours maximum." Thelra spoke up immediately. "Commander, perhaps Captain Reeves should remain here. Coordinate communications and data analysis. This would be a more suitable use of her—" "I'm going," Emma interrupted, her voice firm but not insubordinate. "Sir, if I may. I didn't come here to sit in air conditioning." Vector considered. Every instinct told him to protect her, to keep her safe in the relative comfort of the facility. But she was right. She was part of this team, and she deserved the chance to prove herself. "Very well. But you stay close to me at all times. Understood?" "Yes, sir." They departed for the mining tunnels at dawn, if dawn could be said to exist on a planet where the sky was perpetually choked with volcanic ash. The mining entrance yawned before them, a massive opening carved into the side of a mountain, glowing with the reflected light of the lava flows deeper within. Their guide, a grizzled Pyrosian named Court, led them down the main shaft. "Stay on the marked paths," he instructed, his voice crackling over the communication system. "The ground can give way without warning, and whatever you do, don't touch the walls. They're hot enough to burn through your gloves in seconds." The descent took 40 minutes, and with each meter they dropped, the temperature climbed. Vector's suit was working at maximum capacity, and he could feel the strain. His breathing had become slightly labored, and he had to consciously regulate his water intake to avoid depleting his supply too quickly. A quick check of the team's vitals showed similar stress levels across the board. Crix's body temperature was rising despite his suit's best efforts. Thelra's heart rate had increased to concerning levels. 2 other team members showed signs of early heat exhaustion. And then there was Emma. Her readings remained stubbornly, impossibly normal. No elevated stress markers, no increased cooling system demand, nothing to suggest she was walking through what amounted to the galaxy's most dangerous oven. "Captain," he called over the private channel, "I need an honest assessment. Any dizziness, nausea, confusion?" "Negative, sir. I'm good." She sounded good, too. No strain in her voice, no labored breathing. Meanwhile, Vector could hear his own pulse pounding in his ears. They reached the main extraction chamber, a vast cavern where autonomous mining drones carved precious minerals from the walls. The heat here was almost unbearable, even through the environmental suits. Vector's display showed external temperatures of 118 degrees Celsius. Court pointed toward a side tunnel. "That's where we found the anomalies. Equipment going missing, unauthorized access logs, strange energy signatures. Something's happening down there, but nobody wants to investigate because it leads directly past a lava tube." "Of course it does," Thelra muttered. Why would it be anywhere convenient? Vector made a command decision. Crix, Thelra, you two head back to the surface. Monitor from the command center. If we don't report in every 20 minutes, send reinforcements. Commander, Thelra protested, you can't go down there with just... That's an order, Major. You're already showing heat stress. I need you functional, not a casualty. Reluctantly, the two officers began their ascent. That left Vector, Emma, and two other soldiers, Corporal Vix and Private Gentar, plus Court, who seemed entirely unbothered by temperatures that would liquefy most organic life. Let's move, Vector ordered. The side tunnel was narrower, claustrophobic. The walls glowed with ambient heat, and somewhere nearby, Vector could hear the ominous rumble of flowing lava. His suit's cooling system screamed in protest, working overtime to keep him alive. 20 meters in, Private Gentar stumbled. Sir, I'm sorry. I can't. It's too hot, I can't. Vector caught him before he fell. The private's suit readouts showed critical overheating. Get back to the main chamber. Now, wait for us there. That left 3, plus their guide. The tunnel branched ahead, splitting into multiple directions. Court consulted a handheld scanner. The unauthorized access points came from the left passage, but that's also where the lava tube is closest to the surface. Then that's where we go, Vector decided. They pressed forward, and the heat became genuinely nightmarish. 125 degrees. 130. Vector's vision began to swim slightly, and he had to focus on putting one foot in front of the other. Beside him, Corporal Vix was breathing heavily, his suit's alarms beginning to sound warnings, and Emma walked beside them as if she were taking a casual stroll through a park on Earth. It was at that moment, watching this small human woman move through conditions that were literally killing his hardened soldiers, that Commander Vector realized something profound. He'd been wrong. They'd all been wrong. Emma Reeves wasn't struggling to survive in the heat. She was thriving in it. The left passage opened into a chamber that made the previous areas look comfortable by comparison. A river of molten rock flowed along one wall, separated from the walkway by a mere 3 meters of superheated air. The temperature sensor on Vector's helmet refused to display a number, simply flashing a red warning symbol. His suit's cooling system was failing, the internal temperature climbing despite maximum power draw. "Commander," Corporal Vix gasped through the comm system, "I can't. My suit's maxed out." "Mine too," Vector admitted, his voice strained. "Court, how much further?" The Pyrosian guide checked his scanner again. "The anomalous readings are coming from just ahead, around that bend. Maybe 50 meters. 50 meters might as well have been 50 kilometers. Vector's legs felt like they were made of lead. His vision kept blurring at the edges. Every breath felt like inhaling fire, even through the suit's filtration system. Beside him, Vix had dropped to one knee, struggling just to remain conscious. "Sir," Emma's voice cut through the haze of heat exhaustion, clear and steady. "Let me go ahead and scout. I can move faster alone." "Absolutely not," Vector wheezed. "Standard protocol. Never separate." "With respect, Commander, look at Corporal Vix. Look at yourself. You're both on the edge of heat stroke. I'm not." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried an urgency that cut through his disorientation. "Sir, someone needs to see what's around that corner, and I'm the only one who can make it there and back without collapsing. You know I'm right." Vector wanted to argue. Every regulation, every training manual, every instinct screamed against letting a team member go ahead alone. But she was right. He could barely stand. let alone investigate. And time was critical. If the smugglers realized they'd been discovered, they could destroy evidence, or worse, trigger some kind of catastrophic collapse to cover their tracks. "Go," he finally managed. "But you have exactly 10 minutes. If you're not back by then, we're coming after you, functional or not." "Understood, sir. Stay here. Try to cool down. I'll be quick." She moved past them with alarming ease, her stride confident and unhurried despite the apocalyptic conditions. Vector watched her disappear around the bend, then focused on not passing out. He pulled Vix back toward a slightly cooler section, away from the direct radiation of the lava flow. "That human," Court observed, his rocky voice filled with something that might have been admiration, "is either the toughest thing I've ever seen, or completely insane." "Possibly both," Vector muttered, checking his chronometer. 8 minutes left. 7 minutes. 6. His comm crackled. "Commander, you need to see this. I've found the smuggling operation, but there's a problem. A big problem." "Define big." "They've been stealing thermal regulators from the colony's cooling systems. Not just a few. Dozens of them. And they've rigged them into some kind of containment unit. Sir, I think they're trying to transport extremophile samples, but the containment looks unstable. If it fails..." Vector forced his brain to work through the implications. The extremophile bacteria required intense heat to survive. If the smugglers were transporting them, they'd need mobile thermal regulation to keep them alive during transit. But if that system failed, the bacteria would be released into the environment. On a volcanic planet, like Infernus Prime, that might not matter. But if this shipment was destined for a temperate world... "Can you disable it?" he asked. A pause. "I think so. But I'd need to access the control panel, and it's right next to the containment unit. If something goes wrong, if there's a failsafe I'm not seeing..." "Wait for backup. We're coming to you." "Sir, with respect, you can barely walk. By the time you get here, they might return and move everything." "Let me try. If it looks too risky, I'll back off and wait." Vector's command instincts warred with the reality of the situation. He was responsible for her safety, but she was also a trained officer, capable of making tactical decisions. And she was right about their physical limitations. "Proceed with extreme caution," he ordered. "Talk me through everything you're doing." "Yes, sir. Approaching the control panel now. It's surprisingly low-tech, probably to avoid detection by the colony's monitoring systems. I see a main power coupling, several thermal regulation circuits, and what looks like a timer. They must be planning to move this soon." "Can you tell where they're shipping it?" "Negative. No manifests visible." "Wait. There's a data pad attached to the unit. Encrypted, but I can download it for analysis. Grabbing it now." "Status on the containment unit?" "Still stable, temperature holding at 220 degrees Celsius. The bacteria inside are active. I can see them moving through the transparent section. Nasty-looking things." Vector's suit alarm screamed suddenly. Critical temperature warning. His internal environment had climbed to 46 degrees Celsius. Human body temperature was only 37. He was literally cooking inside his own suit. Beside him, Vix had lost consciousness entirely. "Emma," he said, proud that his voice remained mostly steady. "We need to extract now. Whatever you're doing, finish it or abort. We have maybe 5 minutes before Vix and I both go down." "Understood. I've got the data pad. Attempting to disable the unit now. There's a master power switch, but it's protected by a thermal lock. Requires sustained contact at 150 degrees to unlock. That will burn through your gloves. Abort and fall back." "Sir, my gloves are fine. The lock's not even hot by my standards. Disabling now. Vecthor's heat-addled brain struggled to process that statement. Not even hot by her standards? What did that mean? The comm went silent for 15 seconds that felt like 15 hours. Then, done. Units offline. Bacteria are cooling down. They'll be dead in about 10 minutes without the thermal regulation. Mission accomplished. Get back here. Now! She appeared around the bend less than a minute later, moving quickly, but not frantically. She reached Vecthor and immediately assessed the situation with trained efficiency. Court, help me with the corporal. Commander, can you walk if I support you? I can manage. Vecthor lied, then immediately proved himself wrong by nearly collapsing when he tried to stand. Emma caught him with surprising strength, wedging herself under his arm. No shame in accepting help, sir. Let's get you both out of here. The journey back up was a blur of pain and disorientation. Vecthor retained only fragmented impressions. Emma's steady presence beside him. Court carrying the unconscious Vix with ease. The blessed relief as they climbed higher, and the temperature gradually decreased. The concerned faces of Thelra and Crix as they met the group halfway with emergency cooling packs. He came back to full awareness in the colony's medical bay, lying on a treatment bed with cooling blankets wrapped around him. Thelra stood nearby, her expression torn between relief and reproach. Welcome back, Commander. You nearly cooked yourself to death down there. Vix? He managed to ask. Recovering. Like you, he'll be fine with rest. The medics said another 5 minutes, and you both would have suffered permanent organ damage. Vecthor sat up slowly, ignoring his protesting muscles. Emma? Captain Reeves, Thelra said with obvious reluctance, is currently in Administrator Rixton's office, debriefing him on the smuggling operation. She's also decrypting the datapad she recovered. Alone. Because apparently she doesn't need medical attention despite spending an hour in temperatures that liquefied parts of Vix's suit. That's impossible. I'm aware, yet here we are. The medical scanner couldn't even detect elevated stress markers when she came back. Her core temperature was 37 degrees Celsius. Normal for a human, as if she'd spent the afternoon in a climate-controlled office instead of wandering around inside an active volcano. Vecthor swung his legs off the bed, standing despite Thelra's objections. I need to speak with her. He found Emma exactly where Thelra had indicated, hunched over a data terminal, fingers flying across the holographic interface. She looked up when he entered, immediately standing at attention. At ease, Captain. I'm not here for formalities. I'm here for answers. She nodded slowly, as if she'd been expecting this conversation. You want to know why I'm not affected by the heat? That would be a start, yes. Emma gestured to a chair, and they both sat. She was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts before speaking. Humans are adaptable, Commander. You know this already. It's one of our defining traits. We come from a planet with wildly varying climates, and we've learned to survive in all of them. But what most species don't understand is just how extreme that adaptability can be. I grew up in Arizona, like I mentioned, but not the tourist areas. My family lived in a small town called Furnace Creek, in Death Valley. Hottest place on Earth. Summer temperatures regularly exceeded 50 degrees Celsius. And I didn't just survive it. I thrived in it. She pulled up a file on her personal data pad, showing Vecthor images of a harsh desert landscape. Humans have 2 million sweat glands. When we're hot, we sweat. That sweat evaporates, cooling us down. It's an incredibly efficient system, one of the best thermoregulation mechanisms in the known galaxy. But here's the thing. Some humans produce more sweat glands than others. Some humans adapt better to heat. I'm one of those humans. Medical tests showed I have almost 3 million sweat glands, 50% more than average. My body's cooling system is exceptionally efficient. On top of that, I spent my entire childhood and adolescence in extreme heat. My physiology adapted. My mitochondria produce energy more efficiently in high temperatures. My blood vessels dilate more effectively to radiate heat. My body doesn't just tolerate heat. It operates optimally in it. Vector listened, fascinated despite his lingering exhaustion. So, when you said you felt comfortable, I meant it literally. 90 degrees Celsius? That's warm, yes, but it's not unbearable for me. 130 degrees was pushing my limits, but still manageable. I wasn't being brave or stubborn, Commander. I genuinely felt okay. Why didn't you explain this before the mission? Emma's expression turned rueful. Would you have believed me? Or would you have thought I was arrogant, overconfident, naive? I've been dealing with skepticism my entire career. Not because I lack skills or intelligence, but because humans are perceived as fragile. I learned early on that the only way to prove myself was through actions, not words. She had a point. Vector probably wouldn't have believed her. He would have assumed she was underestimating the danger, overestimating her capabilities. You took a significant risk, he said finally. If you'd been wrong about your limits, you could have died. I wasn't wrong. And because I went forward, we stopped the smuggling operation. That data pad I recovered, it contains shipping routes to 6 different worlds, all temperate climates where those extremophile bacteria would have caused catastrophic damage. Agricultural collapse, water supply contamination, potentially millions of casualties. We prevented that. Vector couldn't argue with the results. Still, in the future, I need full disclosure about any physiological advantages or limitations from you and from any team member. Clear communication saves lives. Understood, sir. I apologize for keeping this information to myself. Don't apologize. Just remember it. He stood, offering his hand in the human gesture of respect. She shook it firmly. You did exceptional work today, Captain. I misjudged you. And I was wrong. Thank you, sir. That means more than you know. Over the next 3 days, the team dismantled the smuggling operation completely. Following the leads from Emma's datapad, they identified 12 colony workers involved in the conspiracy, along with 3 off-world contacts. Administrator Rixton was both grateful and mortified that such criminal activity had flourished under his watch. The extremophile samples were properly contained and catalogued, then destroyed under strict council protocols. The stolen thermal regulators were returned to the colony's cooling systems. Most importantly, the shipping routes were shared with council security forces, leading to interdictions at multiple ports and the capture of the operation's ringleader, a Voltarian arms dealer named Kreshtok. On the final day before departure, Vector called a team meeting in the colony's conference room. The temperature had been lowered to a compromise 18 degrees Celsius, comfortable for most species, if slightly cool for Emma. I wanted to address everyone before we return to the station, he began. This mission challenged my assumptions about capability and limitation. I believed I understood what humans could and couldn't do. I was wrong, but more importantly, I learned that judging any individual based solely on species characteristics is a failure of leadership. He looked directly at Emma. Captain Reeves proved herself not just capable, but exceptional. Her unique physiology gave us a tactical advantage, yes, but it was her professionalism, her quick thinking, and her courage that made the difference. I'm recommending her for commendation and immediate promotion to Major. The team erupted in genuine applause. Even Thelra, who had been the most skeptical, nodded with respect. Emma stood, clearly moved. "Thank you, Commander. I want to say something too, if I may." She addressed the entire group. "I came into this mission knowing I'd face doubt. Humans are still proving ourselves in the galactic community. But you all gave me a chance, even when you had concerns. That takes courage too. Thank you for your trust." The journey back to the station was considerably more relaxed than the trip out. Vector spent part of it reviewing his mission report, making sure to emphasize the valuable lessons learned. Another part, he spent simply talking with Emma, learning about human diversity, about Earth's remarkable range of environments, about the species that could produce individuals capable of surviving in deserts and tundras and everything in between. "It's strange," Emma mused as they watched Infernus Prime shrink in the viewport. For so long, humanity's adaptability was a disadvantage. We weren't the strongest, or the fastest, or the smartest. We were just tough enough to survive. But out here, among the stars, that adaptability is finally an asset. More than an asset, Vector corrected. It's a strength, one the Council would be wise to utilize more effectively. Upon their return, the debriefing went smoothly. The Council representatives were impressed with the mission's success and disturbed by how close the smuggling operation had come to succeeding. Vector's recommendation for Emma's promotion was approved immediately, along with commendations for the entire team. 3 weeks later, Major Emma Reeves stood in Vector's office, reviewing her new assignment. She'd been requested specifically for a mission to survey a recently discovered world with extreme temperature variations, ranging from sub-zero nights to scorching days. They need someone who can operate across the full spectrum, Vector explained. Someone adaptable. Emma smiled, that same slight uptick of her mouth that he'd learned to recognize as quiet confidence. "Sounds perfect, sir. When do I leave?" 2 days. "And Emma? For what it's worth, I'm going to miss having you on my team." "Maybe our paths will cross again, Commander. The galaxy's big, but not infinite." "I'd like that." After she left, Vector returned to the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity was still finding its place among the ancient civilizations of the Council, still proving that these relative newcomers had something valuable to offer. He thought about Emma walking through the inferno of Infernus Prime as if it were a pleasant summer day. He thought about her determination, her professionalism, her refusal to be defined by anyone's expectations but her own. The commander had said she wouldn't survive the heat. The Earthborn girl had never even sweated, and Vector suspected that in the decades to come, the galaxy would see many more humans doing the impossible, redefining what survival meant, proving that adaptability wasn't just about enduring harsh conditions. It was about thriving in them.